going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged Review. This is going to be a review for Game of Thrones, Season 8, Episode 4. And you guys will have to excuse my voice. I just came back from Rockville 2019. Crazy ass concert. I'll talk about that in other posts. But for Game of Thrones, it was pretty interesting because now this is the episode I feel like people should have been bitching about last episode. Let me get into what I mean. Last episode, people were saying there was not a lot of answers given to certain things that they really wanted answers to. Okay, I give you that. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be answered. People were saying there were no big deaths. I felt like there were at least 3 big deaths in that episode. And deaths that had consequences. And so you kind of knew that everything was going to be building up towards this penultimate fight between Daenerys and Cersei. Here's where I feel like they're dropping the ball now. You really needed something to grab, really make the war a concerted effort. You have to build up the friction now. And they kind of did that and kind of dropped the ball. So let's get into this. You start out with everybody in Winterfell. They've lost people. They just had this huge war. There's literally huge pyres with thousands of soldiers and other people. And everybody's saying their goodbyes to Jorah, Theon, Beric Dondarrion, and a bunch of others, a bunch of the Dothraki. And so that's where you start, kind of a moment of mourning. Jon Snow gives his and now their watch has ended speech without the last bit there. And so you go from that to the Great Hall, where it was a little bit somber at first because they are in mourning, and then they realize that they've won this great war. They're there, the dead are gone, and so it transforms into this like celebratory thing. And during that, a lot of the guys are building up Jon Snow as this huge hero again, because they're a war hero. And Dany takes notice of it and does not like it. And it comes to a conversation between Jon and Dany where Jon's like, I have to be honest to my family, but you're still my queen. And she's saying that it doesn't matter because people are going to follow him no matter what. She wants the throne. She doesn't want to share it. She doesn't want to pass the torch. And so you're kind of getting this whole Mad Queen vibe now because she is making decisions that are based purely self-interest. And she's making decisions that are starting to be like, I'm going to do what it takes no matter what the cost, no matter how many people have to get hurt. And so now you have to question, is she really the right person for the throne? She's been built up this whole time, and I've said it would be fitting if there was a Mad Queen scenario. And this might be heading exactly to that point. During all this revelry too, 2 things of consequence. One, Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth. They're drinking, they're getting, a little bit too open with their conversation, and they wind up sleeping together. Kind of saw that coming, kind of knew they were building to it, didn't expect it to go where it did. We'll get there in a second. The other thing is, Arya and the Hound, both taking off from Winterfell at different times, are heading to the south. And the Hound says, I'm on a mission that's probably not going to bring me back. Arya says, me too. So that's interesting. So they are kind of on the way. And skipping a couple of things here, Gendry, during the big feast, was given his own land that the Baratheons owned. As being a war hero, he was awarded. And so that was cool. And he asks Arya if, she would be his wife, and she's like, that's not me. And so she kind of breaks his heart a little bit. And then finds the Hound and goes away. So the big thing here, and this will be a little bit scattered. I just watched the show, so I'm just trying to remember as it comes to me. But so during this, they have a fleet that's heading back to Dany's home. And waiting for her and her crew is Euron Greyjoy and his ships. And they have a bunch of these huge bow and arrows, the scorpions are called. And they take out number 2 dragon, Rhaegar or something like that. I forget exactly what the dragon's called, Rhaegar, I think. But yeah, they take out her second dragon with those scorpions dead. And they really tear apart a couple of her ships with these scorpions. And so they wind up capturing Missandei. And this is really leading to the penultimate moment of the episode where Dany and a bunch of her crew are standing outside of King's Landing with Cersei, the Mountain, Missandei in chains, and of course Grey Worm is there. And so they're kind of jockeying for position, except Cersei kind of knows she has the upper hand because she's got all these arrows and scorpions mounted on the walls of King's Landing. And there's really this episode didn't make a lot of sense because all they had to do was unleash the arrows and the war's over. So why they didn't do that, it really didn't make sense. It's not like they were out of range. That part I wasn't a big fan of. But they have this scene. Tyrion's talking to Qyburn. Tyrion's saying, Dany wants Cersei's unconditional surrender. Qyburn saying Cersei wants Dany's unconditional surrender. And it goes nowhere. So Tyrion approaches Cersei. He talks to her, tries to get her to listen to reason. Instead, she has the mountain cut Missandei's head off. So that was the big death that was really supposed to stoke the fire. And I don't know, man. I mean, it kind of worked, it kind of didn't. At this point, I'm like, where are the major deaths? This is the whole thing with this series that we've grown to become accustomed to. That's the whole thing. It's the same problem I have with The Walking Dead. You have to have the big deaths. You got to get some main characters out of there. You've got to have stakes, huge stakes. That's what made this show as good as it is. That's what makes George Martin's writing as good as it is. He's not afraid to sacrifice the main character. And he did, like Robb Stark. I mean, for a while there, you would have to consider him the main character. So, they really better pick it up in the next 2 episodes. They've only got 2 left. And as far as I'm concerned, they only had 1 major death in all of season 7. And now you're kind of hitting a stall in season 8. You've got 2 episodes left. I understand there has to be characters left over to do stuff with. You gotta, kind of tell the tale of what happens after the war. And you've got to have characters for the main conflict. But come on now. This is where it really does need to start happening. So, as far as the unanswered questions from season 3, episode 3, I still think they have time to answer some of those questions. I don't think it's fully thrown away yet. That's my first thought. Second thought is, I agree with people now that they need to start having some realistic casualties to this. Some casualties that mean something. So I kind of do agree with that now. I felt like Theon, Beric, Jorah, even though they weren't main characters, they were important enough that it meant something. Now I'm like, alright, Missandei, no. So that's kind of left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth with this episode. It was still really good, although I will say I didn't like the writing. Having Dany and a few of her forces standing in front of King's Landing, they could have all gotten taken out really easily. I think that was sloppy writing because it doesn't explain why they didn't just unleash holy hell on them and the war is over right there. So that is one thing I did not like about that episode. Other than that, it was fun. It was fine. Jaime finds out what happens with Cersei killing another dragon and unloading on ships and taking Missandei prisoner. And he decides to go run back to her. Brienne sees him. He breaks her heart. And there you go. so you know there's going to be something bad happen there. So, yeah, so, I mean, the next 2 episodes, it's the war. Again, the war this time between King's Landing and everybody else. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. So, overall, I have to give this episode, I mean, realistically, it was a good episode, but I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because I do feel like they're stalling a bit much, and it is what it is. Like, it's time. You got to pick up the pace. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where I'm at, 6 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackowitz. Kaged Nation out.